This week on Art of the Air features American photographer Laurie Tennent, known for her distinctive dramatic botanical images. Next, the author of young adult novels Annie Sullivan, whose novels Touch of Gold, Curse of Gold, and Tiger Queen mix fantasy and adventure. Our spotlights on Grammy Award-winning Falu, discussing her national touring schedule of her concert Surrender, plus appearing with American Patchwork Quartet.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, WVLP 103.1 FM, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is heard every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Also heard on Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Media. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. And we'd like to welcome back to Art in the Air Spotlight. And actually, it's the first time doing a Spotlight, but you can hear her interview on July 4th. And we had it there. And also, she was part of the interview with American Patchwork Quartet on January 17th. Falu, and she's Grammy Award-winning, internationally recognized artist known for her ability to blend her music in. And she has a special project she's going to talk about, and she's going to share with us on Spotlight. Welcome back to Art in the Air Spotlight.
Thank you, Larry, for having me.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you, Falu.
Thank you for having me, Esther.
You're obviously busy touring with your band, and you have a whole new project. And of course, I know you're busy with American Patchwork Quartet. You guys are out there. I mean, I look at your tour schedules like that. But tell us about this new project you're working on called Surrender with your band.
Surrender is something that came out of the depth of my DNA. It's a timeless experience of the music of India, and the musical experience will weave together a vibrant tapestry of Indian musical forms, from Vedic chants to classical ragas to kirtans to tender expressive beauty of Thumri, as well as folk music. And every style offers a different doorway into surrender, evoking joy, longing, love, and stillness in equal measure. Because I feel India's music is so old. It's ancient, 3,500 years old. And my ancestors told me that music came from the birds. So the first three notes were the first three notes that we heard from the birds. Then we developed into a 7-piece scale, then 12, and now 22 musical notes in one scale. And we are going to start the journey through history of Indian music from 3,500 years ago into its evolution to classical music, semi-classical, to folk music of India, to the devotional kirtan chanting and bhajans, and then end with a great finale called Haveli Sangeet, which is what I grew up with my grandma. Haveli Sangeet is a way of worshipping and surrendering yourself to the Almighty, whatever it might be. It could be the purest energy of the universe. It could be the purest force. It's up to you, your mindfulness, your well-being, your soul, whatever you connect to, you basically surrender yourself completely through music. And that alone lets you just feel that eternity, moksha, for a second or for 5 minutes, for however long you want to sing the song. And our passion is to bring people into this stillness, into this mindset of just, everything is okay. Let's breathe and step into stillness. That is surrender.
It's so true because you know what? The piece that I listened to, it set up such an internal dance in me rather than an external dance. Like sometimes with kirtan, we get up and we dance, or um, the one that I listened to, the interaction between you and the other members, it was so sharing and loving and resonant and very emotive. I mean, it was just so I can see that this journey is going to encompass all emotions. So how did you put it all together?
So I've been touring with so many different sounds in my life. And there comes a time when an artist asks a question to themselves of, you've been doing this. What is it that really speaks to you from your core? And a couple of months passed. I always practice. And one day this idea just came in and said, what is it that stirs your soul, Falu? And I kind of sat with it for 2 weeks. Just answering this question, what is it that stirs your soul, Falu? And I went back to my, childhood memories of my grandma and me going to this beautiful temple and singing these chants, and the way they sing and the transcendental meditation that they go inside through music. And that's what my brain told me, that's what I want to do next. That's what I want to make the world aware of, this highest form of surrendering element in music that I have found. I want to share it with people. And I want to share it with the world and say that we have this ability to take our mind to a place of stillness in all this chaotic environment around us. But there is something called soulful stillness through music. And that's what I wanted to bring out. And that's what I've designed the show for, with incredible musicians with me. Avirod Sharma, who is from Trinidad and Guyana, but his ancestors were from India. Soumya Chatterjee, who has been my violinist for a long time. He also plays sarangi in this project. I have Patrick Thompson, who will be introducing accordion to Indian classical music for the first time in history. Wow. We are bringing the accordion to play ragas. And we also have Gaurav, who sings with me since I came to America. And it's a 4 or 5 piece people band. It's not a big band, but we are multi-instrumentalists. We play a lot of instruments, and together we have created a soundscape of organic, acoustic instruments with a lot of love and passion.
Well, Falu, we're in our final minute here. We want people you can tell how they can find out about every concert you're involved with at your website and everything. Tell us about that coming up.
The next show we have is October 25th, where we launch Surrender at Hindu Temple Community Center Auditorium in Queens, Flushing. It will be at 7 p.m. followed by delicious dinner, because I think food is very important. Food and music go together. So check us out on my website, Falu Music, FALUmusic.com. And you will get all the information about all the tours. And
you can see all of it. And also she's involved with the American Patchwork Quartet, which we've had. And you can listen to her previous interview on July 4th. Falu, thank you so much for coming and sharing on Art on the Air Spotlight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for all this beauty.
Art on the Air Spotlight and the complete 1-hour program on Sunday is brought to you by Ember Forge Consulting, thoughtful marketing and digital learning built to express your purpose and grow your reach. Learn more at emberforgeconsulting.com/grow. And as a reminder, if you'd like to have your event on Art on the Air Spotlight or have a longer feature interview, email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com.
This is Laurie Tennent. I'm a singer, artist, and vocalist. You're listening to Art on the Air at Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP 103.1 FM.
We are pleased to welcome Laurie Tennent to Art on the Air. Laurie is an award-winning American photographer with an international reputation. With over 40 years of experience, her work is represented in galleries around the world and is part of many public and private collections. While she has a commercial side to her business, her passion is botanicals. Creating the images in her studio, she is known for her monumental scale. Her images transport the viewer to a serene space. Her work is exhibited in botanical gardens, galleries, and museums. Private collector installations include interior and exterior of the house and feature as sculpture outdoors. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Laurie. It's really, really great meeting you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Laurie, we always like to find out all about our guests. I call it their origin story. So tell us how you got from where you were to where you are now.
Well, I was raised by an artist. My mother was a gardener and also a fabulous painter and did drawings. And then my father was the entertainment critic for the Detroit News. And also back then, when you're a journalist, you did your photography too. So we were being photographed from, very young. And then I was looking to go to college, and Center for Creative Studies came up, which is in Detroit. And I always had a love for science. So I really liked the idea of photography because of the darkroom, right? Otherwise, I wanted to be a biologist. Marine biologist was like at the top of my list. But once I got into the darkroom with those chemicals, I went for photography. And at CCS, you do your whole degree and really immerse in your major. So from then, I went to work in the gallery business when I graduated. Managed a gallery for about 6 years, I think, and then opened my own gallery. And in order to support kind of my fine art gallery, I started doing commercial work. I actually went back to school to study flash and technique and all these kinds of things so I could, because you didn't get that in fine art education. And then I had my gallery, and we showcased the work of commercial photographers that had artwork, which they usually didn't show. So it was a really interesting mix. And after then I started doing commercial work. I did fashion for J. Crew, Crate and Barrel, Kmart, all these things that are gone now, right? But the commercial photography really boomed, and then I would have the art gallery, right? Still having a little time to do my own artwork, but not really much time once I had kids. And
So I have a quick little
uh-huh.
question. So with your art gallery, was it a photographic art gallery, or were there other disciplines?
It was mostly photography.
Okay.
Yeah. And we also showed some artwork, but, some paintings, but mostly it was photography based. Yeah.
So I want to know about childhood, though. So it sounds like, did your father take you out on any of his assignments?
Oh, yes.
And how did the school support your
my
passions?
parents being, really exposed us to culture. So when we were very young, we were taken to the Ford Theater, to children's concerts. We went to the DIA on a regular basis, and we're really just immersed in culture from a very young age. My dad would get all the records ahead of time, and I think I had Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young before anybody, which was kind of cool, stamped in the corner, sample album. And so music, I mean, he loved jazz. He played saxophone. And it was just a great immersion in art and culture. And then my mom, of course, was a great gardener, and we always had a vegetable garden. And some of my earliest memories are out in the raspberry patch, just, eating warm berries right off the branches. So nature, always walking around, loved to watch her work. And I think my interest in photography came later.
So,
from the
I
time.
noticed, as I was learning about your craft, and you had an image and I don't know if your father took it, of 3 generations of women in your family. I think it was like a great grandmother, a grandmother, and your mother, possibly. So
Um,
did your
that picture, yeah, that was taken by a studio. That was my mom's the little girl in that picture.
yeah,
So it was my grandmother, my great grandmother, and my mom.
yeah, phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah, they're no longer with us. All three of them actually passed from early onset dementia.
Mm.
So that was so I do a lot of charity work around Alzheimer's cures.
Yeah, it's a brutal.
So after the gallery, what drew you to? Maybe it overlapped into doing the things where you do with botanicals and flowers and things like that, and you had the photography basis, and you did the commercial thing too. And I understand
Right.
how that is because I do headshots and things like that. And my studio's on the other side of this background here that I don't do a whole lot anymore. But anyway, what kind of drew you to doing that and doing them like in your studio and things like that? And let's talk a little about your equipment too.
Yeah, sure. So doing my own artwork and being a gallery owner, I really knew how to send my work all over. Back then it was slides and see, you try to get shows, right? And build your resume. And back then my work was, I did all kinds of stuff, architectural, abstract, and some botanicals, but they were always behind glass. And, small behind glass, you'd hang them on the wall. They'd go out to a gallery or a gallery would represent you. And, it was just the shipping and everything. And it just, especially when I started to shoot flowers in my studio with that dark background, the glass just ruined the reflection of seeing these pieces. And I said, I got to get these bigger and just out of these frames. And I tried canvas and I've never liked that. It's like, why, right? Canvas is for painting. Photography, I like that smooth, really juicy,
Reflective.
contrasty
Yeah.
surface. So I was at the Arizona Botanical Garden, probably, I don't even know, 15 years ago, and I saw a show of Chihuly's glass in the desert outside. So here's his glass that was usually gorgeous chandeliers and pieces in, people's house lit, and it's outside in the garden. And it was just like hit me all at once. I've got to get these outside, back in the garden, where they came from, where they, grew. So I worked for a long time with some sign companies. There's also the progression into digital at that point, because when I was doing my work before, you just couldn't blow it up that big, right? And so I started working on this, worked with sign companies, and then finally got somebody who I loved to print the work. And it's very big on aluminum and can be planted back in the garden. And also, when people have it in their home, it's like a canvas. And from selling canvases, a large piece that doesn't have to be framed and is just really striking, when you come up to it. So that's kind of the progression of how I got to doing these big
But
pieces.
what sparked the vision to bring it into the studio, though, the floral because when I first see the images against the black background, the first thing that comes to mind is and this, I don't mean this word harshly, but there's like a clinical look to it. And I remember back in the 80s, a friend sent me a book on glass flowers in the Harvard collection, and the work just is really, you're using the real plant, but it had that same sort of stark background. What made you think to do that? Bring them into the studio rather than...
Yeah, again, this is more of my scientific brain, because I really look at these as kind of, the taxonomy, or creating a huge breadth of a library that has all these plants. And by having that background, it gives them, a cohesion, but it also sets them apart of where you would see them outside. And also, you can't control, as you know, Larry, lighting or anything outside. So I, cut the plants, bring them into the studio, totally dark. And really the work is, more consistent in that way, right? And also striking because you don't have anything else in the background,
Right.
right? Outside, the wind's blowing things and stuff, right?
A little
So
bit of just a little process question too, and then you
yeah.
continue. Is what do you do for lighting in the studio? Do you use incandescent lights or things like that, or studio lights, or do you use flash?
Well, I do not use flash, but it really depends on the plant.
Right.
But the main thing I have, like sometimes I have to shoot down some, I can hang things and use all kinds of wire armature. And I actually use a lot of welding props where they would hold things up to weld. And I've also worked with a bunch of florists and gotten some of their tricks, right? But it's more of a very shallow depth of field. Whatever's in the foreground is lit and sharp, and then it goes out of focus and into the abyss. I'm obsessed with Dutch painting.
Yeah.
Just that beautiful, luscious, almost like a velvet kind of approach to still lifes. And I have been doing some insects and stuff lately, which is pretty cool. But I don't do, a lot of retouching. You'll see in the work, some of the parts of the flowers are dead and some are starting to curl, or maybe they're all dried. I really like that cycle of life, and I'm not going to interfere with that in Photoshop.
Right. Because your lighting probably helps, with the drying out process, maybe. Is there a quick window with some of them? Like the poppy is so delicate.
Well, some things work and some don't, because I am cutting and bringing. So I started to work with botanical gardens. How I started this project was kind of, I need an exhibit. I need to go big or go home. So I was in Art Prize. And so I could take pictures of the work outside, and it was great. Fifth Third Bank gave me like 60 feet of gardens and planted grasses the year before. So when my
beautiful.
pieces were there, boom, like these grasses all went in bloom. It was great. And so I had photos from there and Cranbrook House here in Bloomfield out in the winter. It was called Winter in Bloom. And then I took this collection of photos. I went right to the Chicago Botanic Garden.
Right.
And they gave me a huge show, and that was really the beginning of working with the gardens and their master gardeners, and being able to cut their plants right there and work on location.
Have you been to the Poison Garden in England?
No.
Oh, I'll have to send you a link. Yes, it's all poison plants.
Q is on my list, but
You touched on your process a little bit. Now, let's talk just a little bit for our photographer listeners about your equipment, photography, but also your post-processing. You mentioned Photoshop, and what you said you don't do a lot in Photoshop, but just tell us a little about equipment that you're using.
So my worst enemy really there's two. It's dust and pollen, and they just get everywhere. So I would start with really a layer that is bringing that dark black zero background, right? And then there's pollen and sand and dust or whatever on the plants. And so if it's something that, bothers me, I just take it out, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Maybe a little cropping, depending on what size I want to have it. And that's it. And to answer your question, Esther, when I bring plants in and I'll be working on them, and some, like I said, won't work, but I also have bakery racks in my studio where when I finish my specimen, I put it on the rack. And maybe it's going to dry out for a day or two. A magnolia was a perfect example of that. I wanted the great open photo of a magnolia, all white with the yellow center, and it just wasn't happening. So I left it on there, and it turned into this chocolate brown in 3 days. And that's the image I got. It was like sweet. And I even loved some of the dried pods later.
Completely.
Yeah.
You know what? I was charmed by the exhibit that you did with your daughter, and at one point, I heard an interview where she went, and then like once the image was done, we saw a little snail or slug on the plant. It was just so have you collaborated again since that exhibit? That was quite a few years ago.
Yeah, well, constantly. I mean, she's a brilliant Chinese medicine doctor and has an acupuncture practice here in Royal Oak, and we're always working together on things. That show happened during COVID, and it was at Michigan MSU hospital. So we are, looking to do another one soon.
You touched a little bit on this. You render your things mostly on metal and aluminum. Is that the only thing you use? Have you tried acrylic or anything like that?
Well, not acrylic, because they put the piece behind the acrylic.
Okay.
And it kind of, again, diffuses it a little. But I have recently, because these are outside and because a lot of my clients will show them, they'd like to exhibit them in their outdoor patios, let's say in Florida or something, you have 5 to 8 years direct sun. And it's really interesting. It's the blacks that start to go.
You're right.
And but I have been working with a company now where they're printing on glass.
Oh, okay.
And I just did a huge installation over somebody's pool of water lilies, and it's a 60, a 50, and a 40-inch circle.
Wow.
Whoa.
Now, why I would never think of doing flowers on circles before, I don't know, but it is spectacular. And they're like got this whole process, so they're printed on glass, which makes it way more light resistant, and just have a really great presence. And then they're hooked to the wall with a magnet system because they're so heavy.
Right.
Right. I just finished a show that was in Virginia at the Piedmont Botanical Garden. They're a brand new garden in Charlottesville. And we mounted the pieces right into this garden, which is very rustic right now. And they're raising money to make it into an amazing garden with their plans. But this was great to have it right on the trails. Nothing as manicured as Meyer Garden or anything like that. It's like how I love them when they just pop out of the trees or the grasses and you're
Right.
surprised. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how they work both horizontally and vertically, so many of them. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, it would almost be hard to choose. It would depend on the site, I guess.
Yes, it's true. And I think that comes from my art gallery experience where, you got to have a little bit of both. And if people can't choose for their space, well, that can go horizontal.
Which way is up?
Exactly.
So you also have
If
done
you shoot down on something, it can usually go either way.
Right.
Unless you have a branch coming out of one end, right?
So as I was looking at your website, you have products that you have put your botanicals on. So with the scarves, is there a choice of what botanical you might want on them? Or, I mean, is it like a print as you go kind of operation with the scarves?
Well, this is a sideline that developed out of being in the botanical gardens, and they're like, "Oh, we love your pieces, but where are the things for the gift store?" Which I was like, "Oh, I'm not going to do mouse pads and mugs." I mean, how many artists must be rolling over right now because of that? But I had to develop this line of products, and I first went to scarves because of just how flowy they are, right? But that's a process where, you have to have them printed in bulk,
Right.
and it's a long process. It's nothing that I can do here locally. So, every year I'll print a collection of those, and those are what's available. But I also had a museum hire me to do one for a Frida Kahlo show where they supplied me with a painting and then they did my flowers on either ends of it. So that was very
nice.
Cool. So the other products, the trays and things are really popular, but I can do those pretty quick because I make those myself here in the studio. And yeah, so now it's bags and this and that at least, and then I also speak in at botanical gardens or for garden clubs, and then I have a line of products that I bring with me that people love.
And your book. You have your book.
And my
Ah,
book.
your book, yeah. So, you have. I think we spoke before we started the interview that you have an exhibit coming up in 2026.
That is going to be it's in Charlottesville again. And there'll be more information on that in my website, but the images are going to be outside, and a dance company is going to dance through them to Vivaldi's Rite of Spring.
Oh gosh,
Oh
how
my
nice.
gosh.
I'm very excited
Totally
about that.
interactive.
So there's always something.
Right.
that's-
Well, any projects coming up? Also, the things that you'd like to shoot, or something. Even do you want to vary? It's like, oh, I've been doing botanicals. I want to do. Is there anything else on your agenda there?
Well, I do have a whole collection of butterflies, and you know, some insects are really interesting me. Again, I'd probably combine them like again with that Dutch painting
Right.
kind of thing. So yeah.
I think that sounds exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we have about a minute and a half left here, so we want to give you a chance to tell us about how people can find your work online, of course, your product line, and everything like that.
Sure. So my website is laurietennantbotanicals.com, and a lot of those things are under the shop list, but you can also look at a big library of images, and there's always more. So
Excellent.
Take a look at them. They're so beautiful.
thank
Right.
you.
And people can order your work. Like if they say, "Oh, I want this image," and can you send that out? Like and say, "Oh, I
Right.
like," yeah.
You can send me a picture of your room or where you're thinking of putting the piece even, and I can drop some possibilities into that, which really helps with being able to do that for people that are all over the country.
Right.
And you still do paper, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. But she doesn't do canvas anymore. So,
Ever.
well, I do canvas, but we'll talk about that later. Laurie, we
Okay.
thank you coming on the show. That's Laurie Tennent. She's an American photographer known for her botanical images. You can find her at laurietennantbotanicals.com, and we'll have a link on our website with her picture, and you can link to her there and hook up. Laurie, thank you so much for coming on Art in the Air and sharing your art and photography journey.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah, it was a complete pleasure. Thank you so much.
This is Curtis L. Chrysler, Poet Laureate of Indiana, and you're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media 89.1 FM and on WVLP 103.1 FM.
We are happy to welcome Annie Sullivan to Art on the Air. Annie is the author of young adult fantasy novels Touch of Gold, A Curse of Gold, and Tiger Queen, and the children's book Goldilocks and the Three Ghosts. She received her master's degree in creative writing from Butler University. She loves fairy tales, everything Jane Austen, and traveling. Her wanderlust has taken her to every continent, where she has walked on the Great Wall of China, found four-leaf clovers in Ireland, waddled with penguins in Antarctica, and cage dived with the great white sharks in South Africa. When she is back home in Indianapolis, she works as the senior copywriter at John Wiley & Sons Incorporated Publishing Company. Thank you for joining us on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome, Annie. It's very wonderful seeing you again.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we love having our guests on the show and actually talking about I call it their origin story. Let's say like how you got from where you were to where you are now. So tell us all about Annie.
Yeah, all about Annie. So, like you said, born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm one of four kids, so a lot of siblings growing up, a lot of dogs growing up. But I like to joke that since I'm the third out of the four kids, that, I suffer from forgotten middle child syndrome, but more so than most people because, I have to share being the middle child, so I get even less attention than normal middle children, which surprisingly actually plays into the characters that I choose to write about. So we can always talk about that.
I just want to ask, what's the age separation then between all of you?
It's just almost about 2 years between each of us, and then 3 years between me and my youngest brother. So, and
nice.
it goes girl, boy. And it doesn't help that they are all doctors and lawyers. And then there's me, the writer, but I love what I do. So Yeah, born, raised in Indianapolis. Went to a Jesuit high school, Brebeuf Jesuit, and then I went to Indiana University, and both of those schools really helped kind of foster my love for writing, for reading. And then after Indiana University, where I majored in English with a concentration in creative writing because they didn't have that as an option to be a full creative writing major. I ended up going to Butler University and getting my MFA degree from Butler, which really just kind of ignited my passion for writing even more. And that's actually when I wrote my first book, A Touch of Gold. Was there, and they really helped me refine it and become the writer that I am today. And then from there, once I finished my first book, A Touch of Gold, I went out and tried to find an agent, which is always a very harrowing process and can be full of anxiety and depression as you're constantly being told, no, 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 like you're not good enough. You might get 6 rejections in one day from agents, and it can be very disheartening. But I was actually pretty lucky, and I got an agent within 9 months. It did take me writing 2 different books to get an agent. Because it turns out that agents hate prologues. I don't know if you guys know that, but a lot of agents don't like books that have prologues because they say you can't write backstory if you write prologues. You must not be good at writing backstory. And so that was a bit of a hindrance when I was querying my book, A Touch of Gold, because it does have a prologue. But funny enough, when we were actually selling that book, I took out the prologue because, again, my agent was like, we don't need prologues. Prologues are bad. And then the first bit of advice that I got once we got the deal from the editor was, this book needs a prologue. So, yeah, you can see that things are not often the same between agents, editors, publishing houses. Everyone has a different opinion.
Like raising a child.
Yes, 100%. And I do often think of my books as kind of like children because they're very different. And, people are like, what's your favorite? And I'm like, you can't pick a favorite child, and I can't pick a favorite book that I've written. It's too hard. But yeah, so that's kind of just a little bit about me. I know I veered more into writing stuff there, but
I know. And so we're going to go back to childhood and like teachers that inspired you maybe. And was the family supportive of your writing, even though you probably had a lot of brothers and sisters who did a lot of science kind of stuff?
Yes, I would say I definitely had supportive teachers and family members. My parents were really there for me and encouraged me. And actually often when I wanted to give up, when I was getting a lot of rejections, my mom would be the one to be like, no, you are such a good writer. You have to keep going. So I was very lucky to kind of find a group of people to support me and keep me going because it's easy to give up on yourself sometimes. And the same is true of teachers. I had wonderful, especially elementary teachers. Mrs. Tabor is one. She was my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade literary teacher. And she had this great, classroom environment where for the first 15 minutes of every class, it was just reading. And she didn't care what you were reading. It could be a comic book, it could be a young adult book or poetry, whatever it was. She just wanted you to read. And so I think that really instilled in me, even a deeper love for reading. And so I really appreciated that about her and her class. And I also had an English teacher, Mrs. Desitels, who I actually ended up dedicating one of my books to, who made a big impact on me because she actually had us read the short story, The Lady or the Tiger, by Frank Richard Stockton, which Tiger Queen, one of my young adult books, is actually kind of a loose retelling of. And so she was the first person to kind of ask me the question, the lady or the tiger, because that short story has an infamous cliffhanger ending. And so it really just shows that like teachers can have such an impact on you. Like one story that she had us read led to me writing the book Tiger Queen, just because I wanted to give it the ending that it always should have had. And so that stayed with me from, I don't know if it was 7th or 8th grade, she had us read it. But that stayed with me. And my love for just reading that my teachers instilled with me has gotten me this far in life. And so I definitely would not be where I am without, teachers, family, just friends as well who are very supportive. I did meet along the way a lot of friends who've been there for me and, maybe even become beta readers for me. They read my first draft and look at it and tell me what's wrong with it. There's always something wrong with it. The character's eyes are blue on page 2, and then by page 12, they've turned to green, and, you got to go back and fix that. There's always something, but I definitely think you need a good group of people around you. And so I was very lucky to have that.
So were you writing back in those early, like in middle school or high school? And did your teachers single you out for did they let you know that they felt that you were talented?
I was writing little stories, but I didn't really share much of them with a lot of people. I just kind of kept them to myself. Although I do remember bribing all my friends in high school to vote me as most likely to write a book or like become best-selling author or something like that. So
that's so sweet.
Right? I kind of knew back then that that's what I wanted. I knew, well, let's be real. I knew going in that I was not good at science and math. Those were just not my strong suits, and that's okay. But I knew I loved telling stories, and that's where I thrived, is because I could come up with, creatures that don't exist, characters that are forgotten characters, because again, forgotten middle child. So I love to just kind of focus in on these characters and stories who are also forgotten, who don't get their stories told, and maybe in a way that they deserve. And so that's kind of where I focus in on and how I come at stories. And so you can kind of see how my entire childhood has kind of led me to write about, strong female characters who need to find their way, either let people in or become stronger themselves. And so that's kind of, just how I go about writing now.
In my household, it was my father who brought the fantastical into my life. Did you, by telling stories and giving us ponders, well, what about this? Was there somebody like that in the family that kind of sparked that for you?
I think a lot of it might be my mom, actually. And so one detail that I kind of left out earlier is, so I have asthma. I've had bad asthma since I was a kid. And so I would have to often do breathing machine treatments, a nebulizer, where, a mask covers your face. And it's pretty loud. It had to be plugged in. So I'm like tethered to this machine a couple times a day. And I couldn't hear the TV because the machine was so loud, but I could hear my mom if she sat behind me and read to me, because she could read into my ear, and so she would read things like The Hobbit to us. And I remember her doing that. And so she really would bring in these kinds of whimsical stories for us to enjoy and build upon. And, she got me into Harry Potter and just different things like that. And so I think she really opened up a world to me from the movies she would show me and the books she would read. And so I definitely think that she had a really big impact on me as well.
Well, my curiosity is how you describe your own genre, and I think then we'll have you read a sample from your first book, but how do you describe the genre you're in? I know for me it's like a kind of a fantasy mystery. I want you to describe what your genre really is.
Yeah, I always tell people it's young adult fantasy, but it is more than that. It's fractured fairy tales, fairy tale retellings, stories that are really about focusing in on these characters who might be in the original fairy tale and the original myth and giving them their own plot, right? And just making sure that they feel seen. And that's something I'm very big about as a person, is just making sure that people feel seen and welcomed. And I think we're missing a lot of that in the world right now. So I love to just kind of go out there and be like, hey, you can feel seen too. You can dive into this book, and maybe you're facing something difficult in your life, an illness, or you're being bullied as a kid, because these are, young adult books. And you can jump into this book and you can see your favorite characters face the same things that you're facing, whether that's name calling or a difficult relationship with friends or a difficult relationship with your parents. And you can kind of see how other people tackle that and then come back from that world into ours a little bit more ready, a little bit more capable to face whatever the world is going to throw at you. So that is a long way of saying that young adult fantasy, but fantasy that makes you feel and makes you capable of taking on a world that sometimes can be too much.
Well, let's hear an example from A Touch of Gold, and then we can then talk more about the style of writing and everything like that. So, Annie Sullivan, Touch of Gold.
Sure, yeah, I will read from the prologue, which we discussed earlier. I'll just read a minute or two here. Once upon a time, a little girl helplessly watched as liquid gold spun a web across her tiny frame, racing to wrap her up in an icy cocoon. Her mouth hung agape. Her limbs stayed outstretched toward a father she could not reach. Her legs refused to respond, to carry her far away. Only the sound of bones crackling, drying into rigid metal fossils, sliced through the night air. The gold hummed a haunting lullaby as it pooled in her ears, and specks of gold whirled across her vision. She had time for one last breath, but her throat hardened before the air ever reached her lungs. Finally, a burst of gold clenched her heart and squeezed until blood ran out of it, hardening like candle wax as she succumbed to the golden curse. She could neither hear nor see the outside world. All she could feel was the constant icy pressure of the gold on her body. Her limbs tingled like they'd fallen asleep, but this tingling never went away. It increased with each passing moment, tiny swords pricking her skin over and over again, leaving behind invisible wounds. If her hands could move, she would have clawed the gold from her skin. Over and over again in her trapped mind, she replayed the way her father's face had recoiled in horror, how his upper lip receded and his brow crinkled over bulging eyes as he pulled away from her. What had happened? What had she done to deserve this? She asked the questions 1,000 times as the gold weighed down her body. All she'd done was run into her father's arms, as she'd done every time he'd come to look for her in the palace rose garden. But this time had been different from all the rest. She'd frozen at his touch, becoming a statue every bit as lifeless as the stone swans spewing water atop the nearby fountain. And just like those swans, she couldn't fly away from this nightmare. Because the nightmare had started long before the mysterious stranger had turned up at the castle that morning.
That's Annie Sullivan and her first book, A Touch of Gold. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, on WVLP, 103.1 FM.
So, Annie, do you remember the moment that you decided to pick the Midas story?
I do. I was actually lying in bed when I still lived with my parents. And it was inspired by actually Pirates of the Caribbean, the movie, because in that movie, there's all this cursed gold that they have to track down. And it got me thinking like, wow, what if you had to go on a journey to get back gold that was stolen from you? And I was like, oh, King Midas has a lot of gold. What about him? And then I don't really, I didn't want to write about King Midas, but I was like, what about his daughter? And that's when the idea just kind of snapped into place of like, whatever happened to her? Because in the original myth, she is just a means to an end. She's just there so that her father realizes that the amazing gift he asked for to turn things to gold is not a gift after all. It might just be a curse. And that's all she is. She gets turned to gold, and that's kind of where we leave her. So, in my version, she's been turned back into a living, breathing human being, and she does have to go out after her father's gold when it gets stolen.
Do you have any favorite characters? Obviously, your protagonist probably is, because that's the thing. And the other question, reading your books, is that you like to tell things in first person, which is I think a more difficult way to write than the omniscient narrator or things like that. But tell us your choice about that.
Yes. Well, your first question, I love all my characters. I actually really like writing villains because they're so different from me that I'm just like, well, what would I not do? And then I could just make the villain do that. But I also love there's a character in A Touch of Gold named Hetty. And she wasn't necessarily going to go on this journey with Cora, our main character, the daughter of King Midas. But Hetty kind of showed up and she didn't want to leave. And so she is definitely one of my favorite because she's just kind of sassy and, but she's also she lives in the palace, so she's always had a bit of a cushy life. And so, of course she's going to complain about things and just kind of, make things difficult for everybody. So I kind of love her for that. She's just kind of there as some comedic relief at times. And yeah, so I love all my characters.
It was nice you gave her so much dimension as the books went on. She started out, like this, like complaining sort of good friend, but just kind of irritating. But you really developed her.
She was transformational in your storytelling.
Yes, thank you. She was such a fun character to really develop. And that's something that it goes back to me being a forgotten middle child, is like every character has such a deep story because they matter. They're not forgotten, and I want to make sure that they don't feel forgotten. So that's something that's very important to me for all of my characters, is no matter if they're side characters, main characters, if they appear for a second as the guy, the vendor selling pottery, like, he's got a story too. They all do, because they all matter. Just like
So Annie, can you write the character without having a name, or do you have to have a name at the outset?
I need to have a name. And I actually have an entire document in my phone of just character names that I've not used yet. And I don't even know how many are in there. I just keep scrolling through it. And I actually did it yesterday or the day before to find a character name that I liked, because it has to just feel right. And if it doesn't feel right, then the character's not right. And I am a pantster, so I fly by the seat of my pants. I don't plot out my stories, because if I don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what's going to happen. And so I love that kind of freedom that gives me, but it does often require me stopping to be like, okay, well, what is this character's name, and who are they? So there is a lot of that. And going back to your question about first person, I tried writing in third person, and actually, when I was trying to get an agent, A Touch of Gold was in third person. It was in third person past tense.
Right.
And then when we went to actually sell it to publishers, we revised it drastically and took it to first person present tense, which was a lot of work, but worth it, because I do find that I do my best work when I can really just become that character. And so I really love to have that opportunity to just feel like that person and live their life. And I actually really like being inside their head.
I just wanted to mention, so it's interesting about the names, because some of the names are not really easy to pronounce. And I was almost wishing that there was like an index of pronunciation so that I could get it, like you make up your own pronunciation, because sometimes you just don't want to labor over what the pronunciation is. And so so those names that are so complicated, how do you do those?
Yes, and that's something that I feel like in fantasy, you do have to be careful about not being too complex, but also feeling like it is from a different world. And then I also just like to make it feel like within that world, there are different cultures and different people, and they would have their own ways of naming people. So in A Touch of Gold, there's a character named Rat, and it's spelled R-H-A-T. And so that's something, that people don't always get, but it's something that I love, that he is from a different part of the world than a lot of the characters. And so I wanted him to feel a little different and feel like, again, that he has his own backstory, because every character, just like every person listening to this, feels like the main character of their own story. And so that's something that does come to mind when I name people, is I want them to feel connected to their names. There's some twins in A Touch of Gold, Phipps and Thips, one with a P and one with a TH. And so that was something that I had a lot of fun with.
That was fun.
It's just kind of naming people. And I will draw from various places. Kateri is the main character in Tiger Queen. Yeah. And that can be a little bit of a different one to pronounce.
No, that one's beautiful.
And so there's just a lot of things that I will draw from to make characters.
Reading that, and of course you have a sequel, The Curse of Gold, but is this potentially a trilogy? I mean, to me, you've left the door open to make a trilogy out of this whole series.
There definitely is. And there's a character that actually gets introduced in A Curse of Gold, which is the sequel to A Touch of Gold, that I would actually love to write a spinoff about him as well, and what happens to him, because the end, it's a little ambiguous. So if you would like that, please reach out to my publisher and tell them that you want to see that book.
So far your books have been retellings of stories. Do you have anything in the works that is not a retelling?
I do. I have a book that's actually out on submission right now. It's just a straight up pirate book. It's not a retelling of anything. I love it. It's so creative, but I keep getting told that pirate books are dead right now. So who knows? Maybe I will.
I don't know. Is it ever really though?
I know, right? Everyone loves a good pirate story. So that's something that I'm definitely focusing on. And it does bring a new dimension to my writing, because yes, it is not a retelling. It's just something I completely dreamed up. And so I'm hoping that will see the light of day soon.
Has it always been children and youth? Are you going into adult work?
plan to make the switch to adult. I've never felt that kind of calling. I do love writing for children. I have 10 nieces and nephews, 5 of which live in my neighborhood, so I see them almost daily. So it is a big kind of part of who I am is hanging out with a lot of kids. So I want to make sure that they have stories that they can relate to and that, you know, they can find themselves in. And again, kind of confront difficulties that they might face that maybe they're not comfortable talking about. They can find those in my works.
I'm so glad that was the answer.
Well, in our final minute here, we want to give you a chance to tell how people can find your books, website, and information about you, and if anyone wants to reach out to you, if you want to share all that with our audience.
Of course. Yes. I love talking with anyone and everyone. I'm a very open book, kind of pun intended, I guess. But yeah, you can find me on my website, just anniesullivanauthor.com, or you can just Google author Annie Sullivan. And my name is easy to remember for you guys because it's just like Helen Keller's teacher. So Helen Keller's teacher is Annie Sullivan. I'm Annie Sullivan, so you can remember it that way. And yeah, you can find me on Facebook. Just Google author Annie Sullivan. I have a page where you can learn all about, upcoming things, seeing videos that I post, and same with Instagram and TikTok. I think it's ANNSULLIVA. But again, I'm sure if you just Google author Annie Sullivan on Instagram and TikTok, it will come up and you can just see funny videos of me.
That's great. Well, this has been real delightful, and I've enjoyed your first 2 books. Honestly, I skimmed Tiger, and I will be working on that one, even post-interview here. This is Annie Sullivan, author. You can see books Touch of Gold, Curse of Gold, and Tiger Queen. They're available, I think, in almost any bookseller. You can find her at anniesullivanauthor.com, and, of course, we'll have a link on her picture from our website. Annie, it's been delightful to have you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your arts journey and your wonderful books.
Let's not forget Goldilocks and the 3 Ghosts. That was so much fun.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed my time here today.
We'd like to thank our guests this week on Art on the Air, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Media, 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicmedia.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Media's website as a podcast. Art on the Air is also heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org. If you have a smart speaker like Amazon Alexa, Google Assistant, or Apple Siri, just tell to play Art on the Air to hear the latest episode. Our Spotlight interviews are heard every Wednesday on Lakeshore Public Media. Thanks to Dee Dotson, Vice President of Radio Operations for Lakeshore Public Media, and to Greg Kovach, WVLP's Station Manager. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. We'd like to thank our current underwriters for Lakeshore Public Media, Ember Forge Consulting, thoughtful marketing and digital learning built to express your purpose and grow your reach. Learn more at emberforgeconsulting.com/grow. And for WVLP, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments. So we may continue to bring you Art in the Air. We rely on you, our listeners and underwriters, for ongoing financial support. If you're looking to support Art on the Air, we have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA, where you can find out how to become a supporter or underwriter of our program in whatever amount you are able. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. You'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. If you're interested in being a guest or send us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Brechner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the